Welcome to the Church of Thomas. These are readings from Awakenings in an Age of Angels, and this chapter is called There Were Once Goats. There were once goats. Some led sheep to safe paths on rocky precipices. Some calmed the sheep when the storms came. Some defended to death the herd of sheep. Some led the sheep in their master's absence. Some were told to bear the sins of others, and dying for them, though they were blameless. Some led sheep to slaughter, as the masters willed. Some goats were wild, with a craving to follow a path not of the master's will. In the beginning, God created goats as wild things. They were brave and cautious, curious and discerning, protective and loyal. When God called these wild creatures, they came because they were curious. They were God's, out of love, not command, knowledge, not out of coercion. They stayed because they trusted Him. They loved the sound of His voice, which always bodes well for treats. They follow His lead out of loyalty and discernment of His grace on them. They fight for what is His out of bravery and the sheer love of a challenge. When leading the sheep that are also His, they are cautious of pitfalls and traps. They are protective and nurturing of anything that God finds favor in. They round up strays to chastise them back into the herd. They live with, grow up with the sheep herd, though they are always apart. Though God asks a lot, He cares deeply for His goats. Though life in the wild is possible and has appealing aspects, they would miss His gentle touch and healing love. If temptation emboldens them to turn wild and jump the fence, the Master never stops calling for them to come home. God never stops looking for ways to bring them home to His embrace. Jesus was the ultimate scapegoat, when asked to bear the sins of the undeserving and deserving alike. He died of His own free will. He did this freely to carry away the sins of people, though He was blameless. Long ago, when the sheep started their long path to know God, there were goats assigned to care for them. They were there to nudge and lead by good example. When God's attention was elsewhere, some of the goats jumped the fence. They thought, "It's been a long time since we saw God. We have been doing His work without supervision. We're very good at it." Though then they forgot His touch and His beautiful voice. They went wild, thinking that it would be better to fight their own battles than God's. Although it meant no healing touch, they thought it would be better to live unfettered. They thought it would be better to die by chance to the chaos of the universe than by God's design. It was bad enough that they jumped the side of the fence where the chaos rules, but they took the sheep that had been their charges with them. This made God very sad. The sheep, being herd animals, trusted the lead of the wild goats. They trusted the goats that this choice was for the best. God was very disturbed by this development when He once more set His gaze upon the earth. God had trusted these wild goats with His sheep. They had abandoned their posts and their duties. He called to the sheep and the wild goats. He missed them and wanted them back home. Finally, He sent strong goats to fight to bring them back. With great effort and leadership, some sheep were saved. To this day, the wild goats come to the fence line when no one sees. They whisper sweet lies, lies like, "You'll die anyway. You might as well die of your own will than led to slaughter." Most lies are half-truths to tempt the sheep to abandon God's healing love, comfort, and rebirth. There can be no rebirth for the sheep until they can see God's face and know His unconditional love. By jumping to the feral life, they and the wild goats gave up everything. Once outside of God's love, the wild goats keep the sheep there with more lies until they lose hope. The wild goats love to bully the sheep, dominating them. By making them lose hope, the sheep submit to the wild goats' whims and vanities. All that being said, God rejoices in every sheep's return and every goat's rededication. Love and forgiveness are universal if you just turn to face God.